What is going on, spectators? Welcome back to another episode 164 to be exact. The World Cup is here. It started yesterday, and we have all things footy going on. And we had to bring in our boy, the specialist himself, Dev Barrios, and we got Brooklyn as well. Me and him not so versed in soccer this year in
No.
particular, but that's why we got Mr. Where's Waldo down there himself, and he's gonna
A rep
be getting
for
us our
Waldo for the
guide
boys.
to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, the fall winter version. It's weird. There's a lot of new things about it. I don't like it, but we're gonna get into it. I'm excited that it's here at all because I feel like it's been forever. Devin, what's going on, boy?
Oh, man, thanks for finally having me on.
Yes, sir.
For episode 164. That is a lot. World Cup season is here. It is different in the winter, but I'm already excited that it's already day 2, and we've already had so many exciting games so far.
Yeah, and we'll kind of just start it off. We've had 3 games finish officially by the recording of this episode, starting off with the opener. It was Ecuador and Qatar. It was not so much of a great game, but it was cool to have Ecuador opening it. And I was on Twitter. I didn't get to watch the game because I was at work, but I was checking a lot of the tweets about it, and I was talking about how the Qatar keeper might have been a farmer.
It was his. If I'm not mistaken, it was his very first professional game ever.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was his
What?
first, not just international, like ever. Any level of
Yeah.
professional.
Oh my god.
And
The
hey,
funny
we got to
stat
give him,
about that-
we give some credit that it was only 2-0.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. My boy balled
that's the,
out.
That's the game of his life.
Yeah, my boy balled out. What in the world?
The funny thing about that game was leading up to it, especially with all this controversy about the culture of this country and latest reports about things that are restricted. Qatar was going to this game as like enemy number 1, like public enemy number 1. This is actually the first time a host nation loses their opening game of a World Cup ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sheesh.
Well, because usually they give it to established countries. So like,
Because it's all of a money grab, which is a whole other can of worms.
that's a
but-
whole other thing that we don't have time for today. we do not have time to talk about the socio-political status.
Yeah.
That's for a different pod.
No, but it really is one of those things. And I mean, just the fact that they got this event at all is kind of mind-blowing. And losing the first game ever as the host country, I didn't know that. That's super interesting.
Pretty impressive stat as it goes for how many different places it's been. I mean, think of the 2010 World Cup, and it was in South Africa. And they're more of a smaller nation too when it comes to like established national teams. And it was first game was probably one of the most iconic games in World Cup history. Absolute screamer from outside the box from a player whose name's pronounced Shabalala, and it went down in history just because of the commentator. Drury just went off crazy over the commentating over the goal. If you ever have time, definitely look up that clip because it is amazing.
I need to.
We'll
I'm
do
actually
that
going to do
We'll
that
do-
after.
Yeah, we'll do that after this. That's pretty good. And yes, that's the opener of it. That was opening up for Group A. Then we get Group B going today as well. England and Iran get the first match. England kind of goes crazy. they kind of have their way in their opener, which I think we expect
they
a little
went
bit
off.
more from Iran, but it doesn't look like we will get that. 6-2 is not a great debut. I'll tell you what.
And a lot
No,
of the
it's not.
goals
And
were
when it
just
comes to,
looking wild.
The goals were insane. The goals were
Yeah.
absolutely nuts, especially from the England side. They looked very prolific. Bukayo Saka, Arsenal star, he looked insane. But when it comes to Iran, they definitely look very disappointing, especially because they come from the Asian Confederation, where they have been pretty dominant in their qualifiers. There's other teams too out of that, the Asian Confederation, South Korea and Japan, who are really strong, but they've kind of kept their end. So I was at least expecting a closer game. Coming from a USA fan, I was actually more worried about playing Iran than it was about Wales. But now that they got destroyed by England, it makes me feel a little better going to that game. But now I'm even more
Because now,
concerned for the England
now
game.
must wins now. It feels like we're back against the wall, even after just one game. But that's how it goes in the World Cup. I mean, you lose one big, you got an uphill battle to climb to get out of the groups.
For the most part, and when it comes to World Cup group stage games, you might barely even have one bye. So if you lose one, you have to win the other two.
Yeah.
But the big thing about group stage games that's so important is goal differential. So with England already having a +4 goal differential, a lot of people don't realize how big that can be, because if two teams are tied for second place or even first place, um, the deciding factor is that goal differential. So England already having a +4 in their first game, that's huge for them. So these next few games, I mean, we're putting this at 1 o'clock for the USA Wales game. That game finishes, we'll have a pretty of how things are going goal differential wise.
Yeah, and it makes teams really want to keep the gas pedal just going crazy all 90 minutes, because you don't want to go up like 2, feel comfortable, and be like, all right, we'll just coast and finish this game off. Nah, if you can go get another goal or two, you're going to make sure you do everything you can. Like, especially the game with Senegal right now and Netherlands. It was the extra
Just the
time with
99th minute.
99th minute, after 8 minutes of extra time got put on, and they get another goal, and it's like, yeah, that's going to help you out big time in the long run.
Yeah, it's a big goal for them too, because Netherlands is trying to win that side, and to keep pace with Ecuador is going to be super helpful for them. Obviously, they're going to wind up playing each other, so that'll kind of sort itself out. But if there's a draw in play, they're toe to toe at the moment, which is, again, definitely really big for both of those squads.
And for a Netherlands team that missed the last World Cup entirety, and they've known for 30, 40 years as a European giant, world giant when it comes to World Cups. They always go far, especially in the 2014 World Cup where they won the third place playoff. This is a turning point for them to really prove that they're still that top dog. And Ecuador is no sleeper. They have some really good young players. Players like Moises Caicedo, who plays for Brighton in the Premier League, who are a really good team. So that's definitely a player to watch for Ecuador. But Netherlands team is more of a younger team as well. Players like Cody Gakpo, Frankie de Jong, the colossal Van Dijk. So that's going to be a really interesting group. I would say probably Netherlands will get first place, but Ecuador is going to give them some trouble when they match up.
Yeah, and it goes to show the depth of like the South American like side of things at this point, because Ecuador was never really one of those powers, and now here they are, and they're definitely one of the better squads coming out of there, and just the Americas in general. So if they can sneak out a victory against the Netherlands, they might be putting some people on notice.
Absolutely.
And then we'll slide over to Group B, because that's the one we're super excited for, right? Like you said, this USA Wales game is going to get going. And I imagine for most people listening or watching, this is probably the group they care the most about. This is a US based pod, right? And we mostly talk American sports, so that's why we don't get too much football in there. But with this time of year and this every so often, it feels like it's worth putting our stuff down, shifting our attention, and getting behind this common team that we all have. Right?
Absolutely. I don't be watching them soccer if any, but this time of the year and whenever World Cup rolls around, I'm a soccer fan.
So Devin, my question for you, for everybody who doesn't know this young USA team, we've heard a lot about them over the last couple of months and how this is one of the better generations of American soccer that we've had. What makes them special, and who are we looking out for to make it a special opportunity and run for them if they were going to make one?
Say what makes this team so special is the fact that we are the youngest team out of any team in the World Cup right now. Our captain, Tyler Adams, he's 23 years old. We're all just they're a young and hungry and very energetic team. A lot of physical players that like to play hard and not give the other teams a lot of time to play with the ball. What makes them so different than other teams in the past? I know, we didn't the World Cup in 2018. That was a huge loss, and usually years prior to that, we didn't have a lot of U.S. based players playing in the best leagues in the world, in La Liga, the Premier League, all the big, pretty much the top 5 leagues in Europe. Had maybe sprinkled in 1 or 2 players that were playing in those leagues. Now, majority of our team that got called up to Qatar, all playing for the top teams in Europe. Pulisic at Chelsea, Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson at Leeds. You got Weston McKennie at Juve. You got Jorginho Dest at AC Milan. So these are players that are only just squad players. They are starting players playing for the best teams in Europe. So that's a big shift for us, and it makes it the world of difference when it comes to the type of players that we're going to be up against in this group stage. So there's nothing but up from here for this team, especially how young they are. It'd be super, super fun to watch.
Yeah, and so you mentioned Pulisic. That's probably the one everybody knows. He's kind of been around for a while, despite him also being very young. That's the main guy that kind of got this ball rolling for this new USA revolution. And I don't think it can be understated. Although he may or may not be the best player on this squad, just kind of what he represents to this team, for getting to the Premier League at a young age and now, breaking starting lineups and being on a team as successful as Chelsea, what that provides to a USA team that has always had aspirations, but never quite had the talent, really to get there.
Yeah, and I will say he was kind of the first player out of this generation of players to make that jump. He started at Borussia Dortmund in Germany when he was 17, made the switch over to Chelsea when he was 21. But since he made a switch to Chelsea, there's just been nothing but more and more players blooming in Europe. So he's definitely, even at the age of 23, he's one of our most seasoned players on this national team.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, which is nuts. I mean, his career is not even halfway over. He's had a lot of injuries, troubles, but he still has that flair in him, just that kind of decisive factor of, that one-on-one dribbler that can just create something out of nothing. That's kind of what he's known for. But ever since he's made that jump, now we have so many other players that are performing so well in Europe. So as long as, more of our season, I mean, we have a center back. His name's Tim Ream. He's 35 years old. He's our oldest player. I would say Christian Pulisic is in that bracket with him as one of our most experienced players. That's going to be crucial for the motive, the energy around the team when things get tough in certain games.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if they go far in this, things are not going to come easy. I mean, this is against guys who are professional international players, right? I mean, there's some guys that play for their club, and then, for some of these super proud countries, they come out and they are a different animal when it comes to international play. I mean, just look at a team like Croatia, even. They have a couple of names that you recognize, but then you see them play, you're like, man, why are they dominating right now? And it's just one of those things where you get into international play and it's just a different beast, and there's not really anything that you can do to describe it, but it just makes sense, right?
It makes sense,
flips and you just start balling.
Yeah, it makes sense, and what makes the sport so unique to what it is. And that's pretty much what the U.S. team has been known for in past World Cups. If you look at the 2014 World Cup with pretty much our golden age of players at the time with, Clint Dempsey, Michael Bradley, Tim Howard, Jermaine Jones, we were never a team that was looked at as, they got, the star factor. We have dominant players, but this team has always been a physical, passionate team playing till their legs give out. I mean, we took Portugal with prime Ronaldo to 2-2 group stage, and we took one of the favorites of the World Cup that year, Belgium. We took them to extra time in the round of 16. Didn't get the result we wanted, but just that's kind of pretty much the point, is that we didn't have that star factor, but we had, hard players. And so now that we have those kind of star caliber-esque players that are playing in the top leagues, it's going to be so exciting to watch this young USA team.
Yeah, and so again, if you guys are listening to this, that match is most likely over, or you're watching it in conjunction with it. But we're looking forward to that. Again, this isn't the game that we're all necessarily worried about per se. You have to be worried about all of them, but we're looking forward to the Iran matchup, and we're looking forward to that England matchup for USA. Um, Fully expecting the US and England to make it out of this pool, but weirder things have happened. So.
If you were to ask me before this England game where they demolished Iran, I had USA coming up on top spot, just because solely based on the fact that leading up to the World Cup, all the international games England was playing, they were struggling to score goals. They were losing games in Europe in the Nations League. So I was like, they're really not clicking well. But once World Cup came, World Cup time came, they're really, balling out. So it'd be tough for USA to get top spot here. Wales, no sleeper either. Definitely a player to watch there is Gareth Bale. He's a three-time Champions League winner with Madrid. Just went to the MLS with LAFC. Won the MLS Cup there. So and they have sprinkled in a lot of other young talents out England that play for Wales.
And also, I mean, if anybody remembers for the last World Cup, or I don't know, not World Cup, it was Euros. For Euros, they had that epic group stage essentially that got them into the round of 16, and that was just not supposed to happen at all.
Yeah.
And I remember that being like a really big thing because Euros, I don't remember which Euros that was, but like I was pretty.
It was the
watching
2020
that.
that happened a year later, yeah, because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which was crazy because they had pretty much the goals that they scored. They scored 2 goals in that crazy game. I can't remember who it was, but player who scored the goals, Robson Canu, he didn't even have a club team at the time. He was a free agent, released from his previous club. And after his performance in that Euros, he ended up, going to the Premier League, playing for a smaller team, but still, it's kind of crazy. A player that has had such a bad luck for club time and then comes to the national stage and performs is just one of the cooler stories.
And a good comparison for, again, the big soccer fans is like, think of going into the NCAA March Madness tournament. You're kind of like a fringe draft pick guy. And then you get 3 Cinderella wins in a row. You're putting up 25 plus. And all of a sudden you're like a fringe, like first rounder. It's kind of like one of those.
Yeah.
Like, you can ball out in these types of events, whether it be Euros, whether it be the North American tournament or the World Cup, and earn your way onto a major club. And so that's another reason that like some of these guys are playing a little bit extra. The spotlight's on them. People are watching.
All eyes are on you.
Yeah.
This is the best highlight tape you could possibly have.
Right? Seriously. If you're getting cooked,
don't get cooked.
Ooh, cut the cameras. Cut the cameras.
Oh man.
We'll then quickly go through some of these other groups and kind of what we expect out of them. And I think that's just probably the best way to go about this. Group C has one of the biggest powerhouses there is, with his last ride, allegedly. Well, I don't believe it. Messi in Argentina in his last World Cup. We got Mexico, Poland, and Saudi Arabia. This is a pretty good group we got here.
Yes, we do. And I feel like most people come 2014, 2018 for a while. Yeah, this is definitely Messi's last World Cup. But no, seriously, he's in his late 30s now, 2022.
I'll believe it when I see it.
For sure.
I'll believe it when I see it, bro.
Until next World Cup rolls around and he's like, yeah, they need one more.
They can just squeeze the last little bit out of him. Yeah.
You bring him off the bench. It is what it is.
Yeah, but the crazy thing about this Argentina team is, 2014 was their best run in a long time. They got to the final, lost in extra time to Germany. I would argue their team now is much more well-rounded and more stacked, at least when it comes to their starting lineup. They have a much more, stronger midfield with players like Lo Celso, and His name is for slipping my mind, but they have really good center mid that plays for Atletico Madrid. But those are really two powerhouses. So now Messi actually has a good foundation of a midfield and back line that can kind of let him play his game. So I can see them honestly going the whole way, depending on how things go up in their matchups, because they're for sure getting past the group.
Yeah.
But just depending on how they match, because if they have to face Brazil early, oof, that's tough. That game could go either way. Um, yeah, I would say they're definitely a favorite to win this World Cup. And the rest of their group, when it comes to them, Mexico is always a team that's um, has been known to like no one really wants to play against them. They're such a wild card when it comes to the talent that they have. But I do think that this is more of a weaker team.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to perform that well. I would. And the only reason why I say that is because majority of their team is as players only stemming from the MLS and the Mexican League. Not a lot of players that are in Europe are made the squad, and then they have a really good striker, Raul Jimenez. That's pretty much the guy to watch for them. But yeah, I don't see them getting out of this group. If they do, surprise. The other team in there, Poland. Poland's got Robert Lewandowski. I mean, arguably the best striker in the world for the last couple years.
Yeah, still.
Still, I mean, on par with Karim Benzema. I mean, that alone is kind of just like X factor of not a great team, but that one player can make a world's difference. So it'll be a very entertaining matchup between Poland and Argentina, and then Poland and Mexico. Sorry to Saudi Arabia, they're not going to do
Hey,
well.
shout out to making it.
Shout out to making it for sure. Their goal is to at least win one game. That's probably their goal.
You think they get that?
I think they don't, but like their only chance is against Mexico. So
yeah.
And if Mexico loses to Saudi Arabia, there's hell to pay in Mexico. So
I don't think they can go home.
Man.
I don't think they can go home safely to
no,
Mexico.
that'll be a tough flight back for them. So we'll move on to Group D. Not so much of a great group in terms of overall power, but they might have the best squad in this. I think I haven't checked any like Vegas things, but I would imagine France is probably the favorite to win it all.
Definitely, when it comes to what they've done recently in the past, they're the defending champions. Won the 2018 World Cup as the clear favorite and was pretty much.
And they were dominant the whole time.
They were dominant, and they pretty much just kind of swept each team aside. It really wasn't. They didn't really have much of a hard time losing any game. So yeah, defending champs. I will say this: yes, France is still very stacked. Not much has changed. They've lost two big players since they announced the official squad roster. Christopher Nkunku, who is an up and coming brilliant player that plays in Germany, he injured in training, and then a couple days ago lost Karim Benzema to another injury as well. So that's down two star players. But like I said, they are so stacked. With injured players, they can easily replace those injured players with new ones. They haven't said they are yet, but they're for sure not playing. But they have a stacked squad. The thing to remember though is there is a big curse when it comes to defending champs. 2010 World Cup, Spain wins it all. 2014 around, Spain can't even get out the group stage. And Germany wins the World Cup. 2018, Germany can't get out the group stage in 2018. So, and there's definitely other stories like that in the past. So if beat that curse, then they can go pretty far in the bracket knockout. So that's gonna be a funny thing to watch if they can't get out the group stage.
Looking at this group though, what are the odds that they aren't getting out of it? Like, let's be very transparent here.
If they don't get out, that curse goes crazy.
It goes crazy.
It's worse than the Madden curse.
That curse has a lot of traction if it still comes true. I mean, the only way I would see them not getting out is if they had to play Denmark first, because Denmark is actually one of the dark horses of this tournament. They had such a brilliant run in the 2018 World Cup where they lost to Croatia in knockout stages to penalties, and they had a great run in the Euros of 2020. They just have a really good team. Players like Christian Eriksen, who's been around for a while. He's had an incredible story, especially
Yeah.
that crazy match in the last Euros where he suffered. I think it was cardiac arrest. He had a heart attack. If I'm
Yeah,
not
it was.
mistaken.
Yeah, that was like a big. That was crazy too, because that was just he just dropped.
Yeah.
It was like actually very scary.
Fine.
Like we thought he might have like not gotten through that, and thankfully like
Yeah.
all was like well, and he's back to playing. So
Yeah, it was crazy that he like survived, and people weren't even questioning like he might not even come back and play soccer anymore. But he's back. He's on the squad. He's fully fit. So he's pretty much their most dynamic player. But they have other great players, like Højbjerg that plays for Tottenham. They have good players like Andreas Christensen, center back for Barcelona. So they just have a really good spinal of really good players, and they've been going toe to toe with these European giants in the UEFA Nations League. Really giving a tough time for teams like Portugal and stuff like that when they did match up. So I would see Denmark getting out of this group, but since France doesn't have to play Denmark first, I think they'll be fine getting out of the group in the top spot. I wouldn't be surprised though if Denmark
made a
is
little
on
run.
top over France. France getting the 2 spot. But yeah, Australia and Tunisia, their squad just don't compare to the caliber of these 2 European teams. So I don't see them even winning a game. Maybe against each other.
A draw, the no win challenge. And there is something to be said. You mentioned Benzema's likely not going to be playing. Benzema just won the best player in the world. This last like a month ago. He just won it. And they're going to replace him and arguably get better because they get faster. And it's crazy that like you're able to do that. There's no other team internationally that could replace him at all except France. And now it's like, oh man, we don't have Benzema, Mbappe, and Griezmann. I guess we'll just have Giroud there. Like, let's put a bigger body there. It's crazy. So,
And would he be out for the whole tournament if they make a run? Or is he just out for the group stage?
That's still under review, I guess. Nothing has been released yet. How long he'll be out? He hasn't been dropped from the squad. Usually, if it was like a really long-term injury,
they would just drop him and get
like
somebody else.
And for World Cup, I mean, the World Cup is a month long. So if it's like if he says that his injury is going to take 3 weeks, yeah, that he's getting dropped from the group. So since that hasn't happened, it was probably just a really bad knock. He'll probably be out for like 3 or 4 days. That's still like a hard maybe. So we might see him in the later stages of the group stage, but no promises. But yeah, it's the fact that you lost Benzema, but
they're like fine.
You have Griezmann, you have Giroud. And I like that you brought up Giroud because they both pretty much played their careers around the same time. They're on similar ages, Giroud and Benzema. For at least a good 4 or 5 years, Benzema had controversy with a lot of bad things behind the scenes. He actually got dropped from the France squad for about like 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's finally back on the team, but in that period, Giroud's been the main striker.
And he was like the guy. Like,
yeah,
it's not like they lost
that guy. He still is that guy. But Benzema's clearly the better player. But one of the things that a lot of viewers of this World Cup should look out for is Giroud's goal scoring record. So he is sitting just 3 goals away from overtaking Thierry Henry as the all-time France leading goal scorer in all competitions. And since Benzema is now with the knock, I can see Giroud breaking that record just in the group stage alone. And I really want him to do that because he's a striker that's been slept on for so many years. He's had to, fight with the best strikers in the world for playing time at France and at club level. Because he's played for Arsenal, Chelsea, AC Milan in his late 30s, and he's still getting that on that starting lineup. So he's always been a phenomenal striker, and I really want to see him break that record, and I really hope to see that he breaks it in this group stage, of the tournament.
Dude, one Arsenal legend to another, passing the torch.
Exactly, passing the torch.
Pretty cool stuff. Let's move on. This next group is probably one of the better ones. Yeah, it's definitely one of the better ones, actually. Costa Rica, Germany, Japan, and Spain. There is not an easy win in this group at all.
They're not at all, dude.
This is
not at
crazy. If you guys have ever seen the U.S. play Costa Rica in any of like their CONCACAF stuff, they are a pain in the ass to play.
Yes. And even when you look back at the 2014 World Cup, the emergence of their world class keeper Keylor Navas, who's now at PSG, that 2014 run, he was absolutely unstoppable. He in the knockout stage, they got to two different PK shootouts, and he
Lights out.
was more important than any of the PK takers themselves. He was insane, and that was the reason why he got his move to Real Madrid. So yeah, this Costa Rica team is kind of in that bracket. If the USA, Mexico, Canada trio, I would say like they're just outside that, and they're a dangerous team to deal with. But yeah, and that's probably the weakest squad out of the
That's
four.
probably the
And
weakest, and it's
yeah,
not. It's just not.
it's just not, yeah, because like you got Japan, who not a lot of people know, they have a lot of young talent that all play in Europe as well. They have Takafusa Kubo, who plays in Spain, and they call him the Japanese Messi. So he's got some shoes to fill, but he's real quality. That's definitely one of the players to watch for them. And then you got two powerhouses in Germany and Spain, who past World Cup winners, and they're probably just as stacked, if not a little less stacked, France. This Germany team is probably the most informed team going into this tournament. They have been high flying with goals in the most recent friendlies leading up to the World Cup. They have really star players like Kai Havertz and Jamal Musiala, two really young players that are prolific and create a lot of chances for their teams. And then you have Spain, who have a strong team, but the coach did make some shocking drops to the roster. They left out two big names. They didn't bring goalkeeper David De Gea, who is, in my opinion, their best goalkeeper, and he didn't even make the squad. You have, longtime legend Sergio Ramos that didn't make the squad either, who's Real Madrid great and now playing for PSG. And funny
Which
thing
is
is
wild
that,
because he's still playing well. It's not like he's a step back either, but
so at PSG, there's actually a stat this season that every game that he's played in for PSG, they haven't lost. They've won every single game where he plays. So, which is, he's older, but I think that was
some
warranted.
winners just win. It's kind of one of those
Yeah.
things that some guys find ways to make important plays despite losing a step or whatever it might be. So definitely a shocker that he didn't make it. And this is not the Spain team that we're kind of used to seeing either.
No.
They're definitely not
Much
as
younger.
they're much younger. They're not as technical as like that was the 2010 team that was just like clinical.
Yeah.
Like that team was like they would never make a bad pass. Like they were kind of crazy. So it's
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
not
they
the
won-
Spain we're used to.
Yeah, they won 2008 Euros, 2010 World Cup, 2012 Euros. So they had a crazy dominant run there. And they still, yeah. So when it comes to like the youth of that team, I mean, they have the Golden Boy winner. So every year there's a Golden Boy winner of like the most promising young talent each year, and they have a player Pedri. He won it last year. So he's incredible. But when it comes to this group in general, I generally could not tell you who I predict to get top spot here. If I had to guess, it'd be Germany. But even second spot, I can
don't
see
know.
Spain
I don't
kind
know.
of flopping a little bit
I
and see
don't know.
Japan getting that number 2 spot. People are gonna sleep on Japan. I think
Dude,
they're
here's my take of this group. What's gonna wind up happening is Japan is gonna get a sneaky win over Spain, and they're gonna draw Germany, and they're just gonna cause all sorts of chaos. That's how
I
I'm
guess
feeling
that's
about
what
this
you'd
group.
expect from a group of death. I mean, this isn't the group of death. I would say there's probably of 2, maybe 3. We'll get to the third maybe, but this is definitely one of 2 big group of deaths that you just can't really see how things can go.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. What day do we get those matches in? I think those are on Tuesday or
So today was finishing Group A and B. Tomorrow is Group C and D.
we get that Wednesday.
We'll get Group
Wednesday.
B on Wednesday. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
we get
Spain and
those
Germany.
Wednesdays. So definitely look out for Wednesday because we have that, and then we have this next group as well that is pretty not quite as good, but still got some good stuff going for it, and that is going to be Belgium, Canada, Croatia, and Morocco. Canada has been a pushover in years past. they are not quite that anymore. They're a little bit better. They're a little more competitive. This is a tough one though, with Croatia, who second in Euros in the last European Cup, and then Belgium, which is just always not fun at all to play against.
Yeah, this is definitely a very fun group as well, just based on the fact that Canada, the first time being in a World Cup since one of the tournaments in the '90s. I can't remember which one, but I think one of the world tournaments in the '90s was their last appearance in a World Cup. So it's been well over 20 years since they've even been in a World Cup.
And they're
The
gonna be two in a
the
row. Two in a
they're gonna
row.
be, yeah.
They're locked
And
in.
yeah, and so the funny thing is, yeah, that's right, because we were hosting the next
Yeah.
one in 2026. But they qualified for this World Cup in such amazing fashion. In the qualifiers, they completely classed every other CONCACAF team, even USA. USA finished second. There was at least like a 5-6 point gap at the end of the qualifiers to make so Canada got the top spot. Incredibly impressed for them. They have a great team. Best player being Alphonso Davies, who plays left back for Bayern Munich. That's pretty much their star player. And it's so funny how the way Canada play, he's so pivotal for them. He plays left back for Bayern, but when you see Canada play, watch where he is. He'll be playing at attacking mid or maybe even left winger striker. That's how important he is for Canada. The rest of their players are more MLS based, but they're really strong players. They also have a really good striker named Jonathan David, who plays in France for Lost Lille. So they're going to have a time in this group because they have to go against, a great team in Croatia, like you said, who have been going so far in these last couple European and World Cup tournaments. I mean, they still have Luka Modric. Almost looks like he should be expected to play on one leg at this point, but he's still running around like a madman every game. And then you have Belgium, who have been holding on to this golden generation of players with Lukaku, Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Thorgan Hazard. Are now in the later stages of their career, but they're still the golden generation. Went so far in 2018 World Cup, only lost to France in the semifinals. But yeah, they're still a great team, and this is going to be interesting. I would definitely say Belgium for sure going through. Toss up for second between Canada and Croatia.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about this bracket too is like you have two of the better midfielders in the tournament, right? With De Bruyne, who's obviously been the crux of what's made Man City so great over the last couple of years, and then you do have Luka Modric as well, who he's getting up there in age, but like it just does not matter when you just like bring what he does, and it's more than just like his ball possession. So
He's incredible. I expect to see some more brilliant plays from Luka Modric when it comes to his passing and his dribbling. World Cup.
I also want to say shout out to Morocco for just being like some point fodder for these teams. I appreciate you.
Yeah, for a good time.
They're gonna be there for a good time, and that's the cool thing too, is that some of these nations are just happy to just be in
Just
the World
relishing the experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cup. So like teams like Tunisia, who will struggle to win a game, Morocco, definitely a better team when it comes to they have some players that are playing for really good teams in Europe. Achraf Hakimi for PSG and Hakim Ziyech, but there's really not much depth there. Definitely don't have the caliber of quality that the other teams in the group have. So they're just happy to be there.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things, you make it into a World Cup, and if you're a Moroccan descent, you're like, hey, maybe I can go play for that team. Whereas in the past, it might have been, oh, well, I'm playing in France, so let me play for France, or So
Right.
it just making it really opens up doors for these squads. Group G has Brazil. That's just gonna be the class of that one. But I know Devin has some insight on these other teams, and I want to hear
Yes.
how you feel about these other squads, because the names don't jump out at you, but don't let this fool you.
Yeah, and you pretty much nailed it on the head. I mean, in Serbia, Switzerland, a lot of just the casual viewers who only watch the sport when it comes to the World Cup, they're not going to know anything about these three teams. Obviously, Brazil is the undisputed favorite for this World Cup with how stacked they are.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense how when that squad roster came out, I was just blown away. I mean, every single position is just of the best players in the world in every position. So I can see that I can see them not having any trouble in this group for a top spot. But when you look at these other teams, Serbia, who would expect to not have a great team, but they actually have incredible players. Star striker Alexander Mitrovic, who plays for Fulham, he is just came off of a season in the championship, scored 48 goals
Oh my
in the
god.
championship. Just in that competition alone, he scored about a lot more in other competitions, but 48 is insane. That's like that's literally that's a goal a game. If that's a goal game because there's 48 games in the championship season. So
Oh my god.
so he's coming and he's started the Premier League on fire. He had some injury trouble, but I mean he scored great goals in the first few games. So I mean, and that's just one player. They have other great Serbian players like Milinkovic Savic as a center mid who plays for Lazio in Serie A. They have Luka Jovic, who's another striker who plays for Fiorentina. They just they have talent in very interesting places that can cause trouble for teams. And when it comes to Switzerland, they're more of a consistently present team in World Cups. I can't remember the last time they haven't been in a World Cup, but they've been in 11 previous World Cup tournaments. But they have, some decent players, such as Breel Mbolo, a striker, and Xherdan Shaqiri, who's played for all the big teams Europe, Inter Milan, Stoke City, Liverpool, who's now playing for Chicago Fire. But so they have a pretty decent team. See them getting past this group, but I'd say that they're going to give these teams a tough time. And Cameroon is the last team in this group. I would say they actually have the weaker squads of all African teams. So they're gonna struggle as well. For this group, I say that obviously Brazil in top spot. Definitely Serbia, I can see as getting that second spot in this group.
Yeah, and again, some of these smaller European teams like Serbia are smaller in terms of name, like Belgium. Like those are kind of teams you got to look out for because they do have the one big guys that can break a game open if given the opportunity. So something to look out for. And then likely what Devin was referring to earlier as the group of death. It's every time Ghana is there. They're in the group of death. They create the group of death. They are the death. It's Ghana, South Korea, Portugal, and Uruguay. This is not one of the higher end in terms of like the top end talent for the competition, right? There's no Brazil, there's no Germany, there's no France in this group. But there is not much that separates any of these teams from each other. These are all like, if you had to put tier lists of all these teams, they are all in the same tier as it comes to this tournament. And I have no idea what to think about it.
Yeah, and so this is pretty much the other group of death that I was referencing to, in accordance to the first one we talked about with Group E with Costa Rica, Germany, Japan, and Spain. This Group H is actually insane when it comes to all the big names on every team. This Ghana team just picked up a lot of English players that did not get called up to the England national team, and they decided to back to their African heritage and are playing for Ghana. So they have a coming right back in Tariq Lamptey, who plays for Brighton. They took Iñaki Williams, who was originally of Spaniard, was living in Spain, Spaniard citizenship, but he's playing for Ghana. So they have a great team, and they've always had a great team when it comes to these World Cups. They're an absolute menace to play with. Pretty much, like you said, the past few World Cups that they have been in, they are in the group of death. I mean, just thinking back to that 2014 World Cup with USA, Portugal, and Germany, they put on a show. They gave every single team in that group a hard time. Went toe to toe with the winners of that tournament, Germany, beat Portugal. So I expect nothing less from them in this group. But yeah, every other team is absolutely nuts. I mean, when it comes to Portugal, people that I've seen discuss the World Cup with, they see them as one of the favorites. I don't think they are. Don't get me wrong, they should on paper. they should win the World Cup. They have the same caliber of players as Brazil does. They're absolutely stacked. Cristiano Ronaldo, João Felix, Diogo Jota was not injured; he'd be there. But Bruno Fernandes, Ruben Diaz. I mean, the list just goes on and on. They're absolutely stacked. But they've struggled the last few cycles of international duty games when they shouldn't have. So it's almost like this coach really doesn't know what to do with all this talent. So I can see them struggle, but with this group, no, everything's up in the air. And then Uruguay is going to be one of the more exciting teams to watch. They have held on to they're still great strikers, Luis Suarez, Edison Cavani. They've made the squad, but now they actually have a great foundation of younger players who are just really, really at the top of their game in Europe. We got Benson Cora, center mid for Tottenham. They have Federico Valverde, arguably one of the best players, midfielders in Europe at the moment, playing for Real Madrid. They have a young striker, Darwin Nunez, who just made his big move to Liverpool, scoring goals left and right for them. So they're going to be an absolute dangerous team to play against. Lastly, we have South Korea. Not really much of a well-rounded, balanced team, but if you have Heung-min Son, you can do anything. I mean, this guy is absolutely insane for Tottenham. Surprised at having a player like him in that Tottenham team that haven't won a trophy yet, because he is just that good. And because he is that good, he's going to give every single team in this group a run for their money. So just like Group E, I can't really see how this group's going to go. I'm going to say, which I've had this as a prediction in my past, that I would say Uruguay tops this group and Portugal will barely get second.
Dude, I like that call on the Uruguay one because, I mean, if we've seen them in big tournaments over the last 7-8 years, Suarez and Cavani kind of ball out when the tournaments matter. When it's the smaller games, it's not so much of an importance. But they've always given Argentina fits. They've beaten Argentina a handful of times. They've played Brazil a handful of times. They've beaten them as well. So, I mean, if you can get even into the same conversation as them, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about these South American teams is that in their own confederation, when it comes to like qualifiers, there's this running gag that no team wins away from home, and that's true. Because all those South American nations, they have so much beef. They're so passionate about the sport, passionate about their countries, that it almost turns into kind of like a hatred for each other.
Yeah.
So when they play, there's just absolute brutal physical games, and that's where the gag comes from. That no one wins away from home. If you're home, you're gonna win that game, and that takes a part in World Cup team games too. When these South American teams play against each other, if they ever do match up. It's a blood sport. I can remember back in 2014, Colombia faced Brazil in I think the quarterfinal. It was just absolute bloodfest. They were out to kill each other. There's so many different yellow cards and red cards in that game that should have been red cards. But yeah, Uruguay is a feisty team, high quality. That's why I think they're going to get first place in that group.
Yeah, and that's really the group to look out for again, because really anything can happen. Uruguay could lose this first game and just flip this whole script on its head. So, and I could very well see it. Like it's kind of one of those things.
Exactly.
And you mentioned Colombia. I want to talk about them and another team real quick with Italy. Two of the bigger mainstays when it comes to just seeing them in the tournament. Not here. They did not qualify. Italy, who did they lose to not? It was like not the best of squads that they lost, and it knocked them out of contention.
They lost. I want to say they lost to Serbia. Serbia was already qualified. Don't quote me on that, but because I watched that game, and I want to say it was either Serbia or Ukraine. But yeah, it was a huge. It was in the They ended up having to go to like the last resort of getting called up or like making it to the World Cup. It was the Intercontinental Cup, and Portugal almost missed out. But they ended up performing pretty well in that. But yeah, Italy is a huge loss to this tournament, especially you consider that they just won the 2020 Euros. So a team that just won the 2020 Euros doesn't make a World Cup. That's just absolutely insane to me. And there's definitely like this precedent that if you win the 2020 or Euros, that you should automatically qualify for the World Cup because you're saying
You're the
your
best team
World
in
Cup that's
Europe, but
two
you're not
away.
good enough for the world. Yeah.
Right. A World Cup that's 2 years after every Euros, you're not going to be a part of it. That's just insane to me. Huge loss, but I mean, they also, that's just how the rules go. I mean,
You got to qualify outside of the one tournament,
if you're not performing in qualifiers, then you don't deserve to be there, which is
No.
all fair. It's just crazy that they miss out. Yeah, Colombia too. They've always been such an exciting team to watch in the World Cup. 2014, probably one of their better ones, getting to the the quarterfinals in such fashion with James Rodriguez playing out of his mind. Big loss as well.
Yeah, it's crazy that those squads aren't here, but there's always going to be somebody who doesn't make the cut. Brooklyn, I know you haven't had a lot to offer in terms of analysis on this, but you do have a gut feeling.
I do.
You do have a gut feeling, and I want to know from the outside perspective, you're looking and you're just seeing names and colors on a board. What is your gut feeling on a final in this World Cup?
On a final.
Give me a 2-team final out of you.
2-team final. We are gonna go
without keeping like the routes in mind. We don't care about that. This is that's not fair. That's semantics. We don't care.
I'm gonna go England, Uruguay.
Oh,
that's a fun one. That's a really fun one.
I'm going England, Uruguay.
Luis Suarez getting a World Cup victory, huh? Or is it finally coming home?
Oh, it's never coming
home. It's never coming home.
The last time those two teams played, where it was actually in the 2014 World Cup in the group stages, they were in the group of death with Italy, and I can't remember the fourth team, but Uruguay came on top. So if that was the final, I would see Uruguay winning that.
I would as well, but that would be a little zesty one.
Yeah,
it would.
Devin, how about you? Where are your predictions on this?
When it comes to the final, I would say let it be written in the stars for a Brazil-Argentina final.
Ooh,
that's
amazing.
incredible.
That's a bloodbath waiting to happen.
The way that the brackets come out, as long as both teams get first place, they will be on opposite sides. I'm sorry, I'm going to get into semantics now of how
you're allowed to. You're allowed to.
But if they both get first place in their groups, then they'll be on opposite sides of the bracket, and that's pretty much the groundwork that needs to be laid for such a juicy final to happen. So as long as they both get first place and they win all their games up to the final, that's how they'll meet. And if that happens, I genuinely could not tell you who could win that game. I mean, Brazil's the favorites, but when it comes to a Brazil-Argentina, that's like one of the classic international rivalries that it just...
Yeah.
So
that'll be fun.
Yeah. And I truly think that can happen, and I hope it does.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move in slightly different, but also the same. I'm going to go with Belgium and Argentina, and Argentina's going to win it off the will and the strength of the Messi farewell tour. We've seen diabolical things this season and last season in the MLB happen with farewell tours, and that trend's going to continue into somehow World Soccer, and that's
That'd be insane.
I don't like it, but it's what the gut's saying.
Yeah. When I thought you were going to say Portugal, Argentina, that would be nuts, because then
nobody's ever more down on Portugal than I am. I don't know why. I've never felt what they're cooking. Never.
I agree with you too. Like they're stacked, but they haven't been performing as well as they should. But just that would be another crazy story too. Portugal, Argentina, the whole Messi versus Ronaldo debate.
The last ride, the last true battle.
Yeah.
If there was ever a storyline,
if there was ever a reason to think this was rigged, look out for that.
For that final, yeah.
Look out for that final.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which it's in Qatar, so it sure as hell might be rigged.
Yeah.
They've done a lot to get it there. But so we got This USA game is either about to kick off or just did. It just kicked
We're-
off
we're
about
s-
5
we're
minutes
6
ago.
minutes in
Yeah,
right
we
now.
are out here watching it, so we're gonna get out of here so we can go ahead and enjoy that. Go
this game.
USA. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about the team. If you didn't know too much about them, let us know who you guys think are gonna make it to the final and just make it out of the groups in general. And we'll keep you up to date with the World Cup coverage as it goes. We'll probably be talking about it the next couple weeks on the pod. And check out our TikTok over at Spectators Media and our Instagram where you'll get a lot of the updates on the tournament as well. And until next week, we'll see you guys later.
Peace.
See y'all later.